Since you have a different chairman today because Don Parsons is Representative Parsons is elsewhere, I'm going to allow you to have an opportunity to sign up for brief comments if we find it's necessary. We'll go ahead and Representative Willard has arrived. We're going to change our. Do we have an extra copy? We're working on one for you.
What's the bill number?
1049. Chairman Willard, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand you could not find Representative Martin, I assume.
Could not. So I left my committee, but I'm glad to do it. This is something very important, I think, to the local governments. I want to present to you a follow-up bill to what was before this committee last year. Those who may remember, we were addressing trying to be sure the state was getting the funds that were due to the local governments for their 911 systems. And we recognized there was a fee being collected for what we call prepaid purchase of telephone minutes, and there was a 75-cent charge that was coming into the state through the Revenue Department and then going to the general fund. That has not been the intent or the purpose of the use of those funds, and so the legislature agreed and passed the bill we had last year that will still have the collection by the state of those fees, but then distributing it to the local governments based upon population of the various users of 911 services, city and county. A good bill. This year, we've come back because we discovered, I should put it, a certain telephone provider discovered what I'll call a loophole maybe in the bill in their interpretation of it, and the Attorney General, I understand, agreed with their interpretation. And what happens is this, Mr. Chairman, you have this one particular company, they sell a service that's a monthly service. And in the past, with the sale of that monthly service, they were collecting the normal $1.50 and remitting that money to the various local governments that provided where those telephones were located. Their way of selling their service is you will buy a monthly service and you pay for it in advance. So they recognize and consider that to be a prepaid service. And with the way the law is written, the prepaid service is different from the service by, say, AT&T and Verizon, where they bill you at the end of the month for your service. But they then say, well, great, we don't have to remit $1.50. We don't have to collect $1.50. All we got to collect is 75 cents. And so we collect that, and they send it into the state fund as opposed to paying it to local funds. It has caused, I know in the metropolitan area, a substantial impact of the fees that are received for 911. And we went to look at it, and I worked with some representatives from AT&T and Verizon about it, because it also has put those other companies at a sales disadvantage because they're selling the same thing, but they're collecting on the end as opposed to collecting in the beginning. And we came up with the language which you see in Section 1, which recognizes that a service is, the prepaid wireless service means a service where a telephone subscriber pays a wireless service supplier in advance for the wireless telecommunication, A, that is sold in predetermined units or dollars, the number of which declines with the use of a known amount and which expire without an additional retail purchase of the units or dollars. We asked, and technical people said this will resolve and capture what is that type of service use. Joe Schuer, who's no longer with our legislative council, assisted in getting the language that we have here for that purpose, and that addresses what is Section 1. If you go over to Section 2, and there's more language there about, I didn't get the second page, but it all deals with that issue about the type of prepayment of service. Section 2 deals with another issue that I think has become more and more important. When we certainly did our 911 statutes, there was no such thing as voice over internet protocol. That in the last probably 5-7 years has become a major provider of telephone service throughout the country. And what you have with voice over internet protocol is you're getting your service of your telephone in your home through your computer systems over the internet. Now it goes out and it will eventually come into a trunk system at some point and somewhere for delivery of a phone. But there are untold numbers of people. I think you can go on the internet and you can probably pull up quickly 50 companies that you can consider subscribing for your telephone service through those voice over internet protocol systems, and remove yourself for what I call a trunk system, which is what AT&T would be, the old Bell South system. The problem with that is, back when we drew up the law, not knowing these things, we did not have in the law a way of identifying who are the companies providing that service. We're not trying to police them. We're just trying to find out who in Georgia actually provides the service, because in doing so, the law is still requiring that there be the payment of a fee for the 911 service. I can speak in the fact that I know of several companies I'm aware of, not companies, sorry, counties or cities providers of the 911 service, and they're seeing a constant dropping of their revenues. Although, when you consider what do you have now, everybody walks around with a phone in their pocket. They'll have one at their home, and because you have voice over internet at your office, you'll have numerous lines, maybe as opposed to the past, you had maybe 3 trunk lines. The thing we're trying to do is just say, identify who you are as a voice over internet provider, register your company with the emergency management office for the state, and tell us where you're operating. Now, with that, we can notify them and be sure they are, in fact, doing what the law requires in Georgia for the collection of the proper fees and having it distributed to the government to which it is entitled. That is what we're doing, is in here where we talk about defining under Section A any service supplier. We talk about or voice over internet protocol service supplier. That is pulling those in all the definitions we have about service suppliers of telephone systems. Section 3 deals with another section that addresses the that company that we talk about where they're doing the prepaid service. They were not obtaining and paying the what we call cost recovery, which is required under paragraph 1 in here for a wireless service supplier. So that was only also being sure they were added where you have this defined prepaid wireless service. Section 4 is, again, doing the changes of the definitions to take what we have as far as telecommunications out as a term in talking about the prepaid wireless services. That was suggested as a change of wording by Legislative Council to have the this section, which is under 46.5.134, correspond with what we're doing under Section 1 of the bill. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer hopefully any questions. There may be some other parties here who are familiar with what we're doing and might want to talk to the committee.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any idea how much revenue has been lost to the cities or the state?
It's hard to say. Say this one provider is a major player in the telecommunications wireless field in the state. That is the name of it is Mobile PSC. I think it's the name of it. They do that type service. They're the one big one. I think there's some other smaller ones that do it. But
Metro
PCS. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Mobile Metro PCS.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. But it is a large sum of money. I know. Speaking to a city that I'm involved with, Sandy Springs, it dropped down their income, they believe, about $200,000 a year.
That's a nice piece of change.
It is.
23. Who is 23?
Mr. Chairman, when we talked about this last year, one of the subjects that came up had to do with the VoIP, where people might be able to dial 911 or they were having troubles and no way to locate exactly where their residence was. Was that ever worked out?
You know, I'm not sure, Representative. The thing you have is the systems with 911 are becoming much better in doing what we call GPS locations. I know the more modern equipment they're installing does carry with it GPS because you do have wireless type systems a lot of times used, and so there is means of within the industry and the technology to do that.
19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can you tell me how far that they can go back to recoup their cost?
I don't believe, Mr. Fraser, they can go back and recoup costs. I may be wrong. If you had a legal obligation to collect and send that on, for instance, the voice over internet protocol providers, if they have not collected it, there could be a claim. I think the main interest here is just to start being sure that if there are funds that need to be collected, they do become collected. But I can't answer whether or not it should be something to go back and be collected.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Chairman?
Not for me, but thank you.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Fullerton.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed a light. Number one.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's me. I'm trying to get a clear understanding on page 5, 162. You help me with that.
Line 162.
And through 165.
Okay, that Representative is still existing law. That is not something we're changing. That is currently in the law. The lines 162, a seller shall be permitted to deduct and retain 3% of prepaid wireless. This is much as we do with, say, for instance, the sales tax. We provide the retailer as a part of their costs incurred in collecting a tax that they can receive an administrative fee. And so there's been existing their right to collect this 3% of what they collect as an administrative fee for the service of collecting those fees for the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, we're working with LC 3621115S.
Yes, sir.
It's important because some of us were looking at something
That's true.
else.
We had a previous bill. You're right, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Are there any further questions? Is there anyone in the gathering that would like to speak to this piece of legislation at all? If not, forever hold your peace. Do I have a motion? And a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Like sign. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your support. Very grateful.
Since Chairman Parsons is not with us today, Representative Hamilton will, or Chairman Hamilton will make the presentation on House Bill 520 LC 361886.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you House Bill 520. I'll also say that this came out of the Energy Subcommittee unanimously with a do pass. And Chairman Parsons, unfortunately, yesterday was called out of town on a family emergency. He had to leave this morning. So our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family as they deal with that. He's asked me to, since it was in my subcommittee, the Energy Subcommittee asked me to present this. This bill right here, and I'll just somewhat repeat what he said in the subcommittee. This deals specifically with the. Thank you. Excuse me. I had a little cheat sheet up there. This bill specifically deals with renewable energy, and when the law was drafted, it put a 0.2% maximum of the amount of renewable energy that the service providers would agree to buy back. And what he's done is the chairman has said that he was a little bit surprised at how there's not more of a advertisement for the availability of this energy. And so you buy it back and you pay typically a premium price because it's green energy. But he really wants to bring in an awareness. And in talking to the service providers, they thought that this was a way. It does not force anything, does not mandate anything. It's just simply bringing attention to the fact that this renewable source energy is available. And so he wanted to raise it from 0.2 to 2.5%. And it's my understanding that the energy companies, the utilities, have no opposition to this. And in fact, there may be some interest in this recognition. And that's really all the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
Could you tell me what Code Section 46355 does?
No.
All right. Since you're not the primary sponsor, I can understand that.
I just know in testimony the reference was to this is the renewable energy section, and so it deals with that energy and buying the back. And so we have consumers out there that are willing to pay a premium price for this energy because of their desire to promote the green energy.
Coach Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, looking at line 4 here, and I just want to get a clarity. Will this bill be customer friendly?
Line 4?
Mm-hmm. It says purchase from an eligible customer generator.
Right. It's my understanding that people have the ability to create green energy and sell it back to the provider. And so that's what this is doing. It's really a recognition that there is this amount of energy, or excuse me, the service provider. So there's customers out there that want this energy. They're willing to pay a premium for this energy, and that's what we're trying to do. And they're trying to bring the chairman said yesterday, for example, he is interested in finding how he can purchase some of this energy because he wants to promote the use of renewable energy.
Is whom?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, it doesn't state in here that it says buying back from customers. I have a concern about residential and a big three-phase customer. I can understand a big manufacturer wanting to, sell back, but it doesn't specify here, or maybe this is solely designed for that, for industrial customer or three-phase customer. But I can't even imagine what kind of mess we get into if we're going to try to buy back from a residential out there running this generator.
I don't think that's what it's saying. Maybe I misspoke. I was trying to answer the customer part. The customer is the person that is receiving. All this is doing is trying to bring emphasis to the availability of that green energy, so that they're trying to bring recognition to the industry. And if someone is here from the industry that would like to speak, I know that the way it was explained is that it's not mandating, it's doing anything. And in fact, I spoke with one of the utilities afterwards just to confirm that they had no problem with the percentage. And they say the way it's currently drafted, there's no problem whatsoever. So I've not heard any opposition to this, other than when it initially was introduced, I heard people say that they had a concern that this was a mandate, and it's not. It's just allowing a certain percentage to be purchased.
Again, I understand that. It doesn't specify, who they can buy it back from. In other words, if you've got a whole subdivision, everybody's got a portable generator, or emergency generator, they're going to open the switch and turn around and sell it back out down. Yeah, I guess that's the only thing. That's all. And if they don't have a problem with it, I certainly don't.
It's my understanding that no one in the
the EMCs and Georgia Power were in the audience, and there's no testimony that they have any problems with this bill.
Well, I think what it says is that it shall be, they shall be required to purchase the energy as specified in that code section 46355.
And that might specify the difference between residential and commercial too, I guess.
I'm sorry, I'm just not as familiar with this.
I understand I'm not either, since I just learned today that I was going to be chairing this. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this, by the way, before we move on? If not, does Chairman Hamilton have anything else he wants to add?
Nope, just ask for your favorable consideration on behalf of the...
And as to what you were talking about, and I'm very, very new, as you know, but it was the difference between the words will and shall. I'm just not familiar what the two, it doesn't say may, it says shall, and that's what I don't understand.
Right. And it says it shall only be required.
That's on line 11. On line 15, it says shall be required to purchase.
But there it says no electric service provider shall be required to purchase.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me now.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, thank you, Chairman. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of House Bill 520, say aye. Opposed? Thank you. Are we going to take your next one as well? Where is it? Where is the other one?
It's right here.
This is it?
Yeah.
We are dealing with House Bill 934, LC 256031S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize for the confusion. As you know, I didn't author these bills, and so I'm doing the best I can. If you want me to talk about 855, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. So, but I'm sure the chairman appreciates your support. Let me explain a couple things about 934. We had a committee sub that was delivered right before the subcommittee. The original 934 that some of you may have seen or that was in your folder today before we did this was a very short bill, and it only dealt with opening the list of qualified energy service providers maintained by GEFA to allow for additions and providers at any point. The way the law was written, it only allowed for it every 3 years. And the point was it was a good program, and so why do we want to limit that? And there's companies, and there may be one here that wants to give testimony today, that this just allows that qualifying period to be entered at any time versus just once every 3 years. In looking at the bill, evidently on, it's my understanding, sine die, whether it was last year or the year before, some code section was, or some, as you know, what can happen on the sine die, there was a law that was passed that unfortunately it inadvertently used some language from another state, and there were some terms in there that didn't make sense for Georgia, and so the local communities, and GMA is here to bring specific testimony if y'all would like that today. This bill passed out unanimously, but there was some specific cleanup language that needed to be changed. And so the chairman had agreed to take that specific language and add it to his bill because it's the same code section. It deals with the energy savings performance contracts, which are used at the local level. And those are the additions. So section 1, 2, 3, most of 3, and then 4 and 5 are all additional changes. And I'd be very happy to have Ashley from GMA come down and explain those if the committee needs that. If not, we can certainly move on. And so I'll leave that up to the discretion of the chair as to whether you want that testimony or not.
Chairman Hamilton, we have a question from 26.
No.
You waive?
Yeah.
Why don't you have her
Ashley, would you
join you? Thank you for coming by.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Were there any specific questions you'd like me to speak to with the bill? I would like to say we definitely appreciate Chairman Parsons and as well as Chairman Hamilton and the committee's support in this legislation. As the chairman already mentioned, it just ensures that our local governments understand that they can utilize these energy performance savings contracts, and when they choose to, which sections in Georgia law they have to follow. So.
Any question? Excuse me.
Was this Senate add-ons on the last day that caused us problems with the simple bill we did have?
I can't speak to that, unfortunately. I do know it was a last hour type thing, just as the chairman mentioned, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
That would make sense.
Any further questions? Hearing, is there anyone that would like to speak to this in the audience? Hearing from no one. Do I have a motion? Second? Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, since the fourth bill is not going to be heard, is that correct?
Yeah, taken off the agenda.
It was taken off the agenda. We will stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.